Why don't you just disappear? My daughter-in-law snapped during a fight. My son joined in. The walls are thin in this house, thinner than they used to be. Or maybe it's just the silence that makes everything louder. The ticking of the stove clock, the drip of the kitchen faucet, and now her voice. It's sharp enough to cut through bone. Why don't you just disappear? The words don't echo. They don't need to. They land right in front of the stove where I'm standing holding a plate of roast chicken I made for dinner. A plate no one asked for. A dinner no one thanked me for. She's standing at the sink, arms crossed tight like she's bracing for impact. My daughter-in-law. Her face is flushed not from heat but from fury. Behind her, my son leans against the counter, not saying a word, not looking at me. I glance at him. Just one glance. I've known that face since he was seconds old, purple and screaming in my arms. He doesn't meet my eyes. He picks at the skin around his thumbnail like a teenager waiting for his turn to talk. My voice comes out quieter than I mean. You were just inserting yourself again, she snaps. Like you always do. My hand tightens around the plate. It's my house, I say, but the words sound foolish even to me. Not anymore, it isn't, she mutters, and then louder with venom. Maybe it's time you get your own life instead of clinging to ours. Clinging. I want to laugh. I want to cry. I want to throw the plate on the floor and scream, but instead I do what I've done all my life. I stay still. I breathe in. I try not to let the tears rise. My son, my only child, finally speaks. Maybe this living arrangement isn't working anymore. My knees buckle a little. Just a little. Enough that I have to lean on the back of a chair. I want to ask, what did I do to deserve this? But I already know they won't answer. I cooked. I cleaned. I babysat. I kept quiet. I helped them get back on their feet after the layoff. When they needed a place to stay, I said yes. Of course I said yes. What kind of mother doesn't? I didn't expect parades or medals, but I didn't expect to be treated like furniture either. Disposable, dated, in the way. I place the plate on the counter. The sound is too loud. I'll be upstairs, I say, even though I already know there's nothing upstairs that belongs to me anymore. The guest room has become a storage space for their boxes. My favorite chair was moved to the garage. My knitting basket disappeared 3 weeks ago. I take each step like I'm moving through water. In the hallway mirror, I catch a glimpse of myself. Gray roots I haven't touched up in months. Wrinkles I used to wear like badges now feel like targets. I used to be someone. I used to be his whole world. And now I'm just an intruder in my own home. I sit on the edge of the bed, hands clasped tight in my lap. The light from the hallway seeps under the door. I hear the clink of forks against plates downstairs. They're eating the dinner I made. Without me. Why don't you just disappear, she said. And for the first time, I wonder what would happen if I did. Would they notice? Would they care? Or would they just be relieved? That night I don't sleep. I don't even try. I lie awake listening to every creak of the house I used to love, every whisper of wind against the window. I think about every birthday party I hosted, every school pickup I did when they were too busy, every time I bit my tongue when I was hurt so I wouldn't make things harder. I think about my husband gone 8 years now and how he'd never have allowed this. Not under his roof. But it's not his roof anymore. It's not even mine. By morning, something in me has shifted. I won't fight. I won't scream. I won't ask them to love me again. But I will do one thing. I will disappear. But not the way she meant. I sit by the window while the coffee brews, watching a squirrel dance along the power line. Its tiny claws cling effortlessly, its tail waving like a flag in a breeze. It knows where it belongs. I'm not sure I do anymore. The house is unusually quiet this morning. No slamming doors, no footsteps overhead, just the low hum of the fridge and the occasional crack of my knuckles as I rub my hands together. They've started to ache in the mornings, especially when it's cold. I make a single cup. No one else wants coffee the way I make it. Too strong, they say. Too bitter. I used to make it just like this, for my husband, back when the mornings meant something, when we'd sit together on the porch, in our robes, not saying much, just breathing the same morning air. That was life. This is just passing time. I hear them upstairs, my son and daughter-in-law, talking low. Doors opening and closing. Her laugh filters through the ceiling, muffled but unmistakable. I haven't heard her laugh in days. Not since that night. The one where my son, stood there and let her spit venom like I was nothing. He was always a quiet child, thoughtful. He used to cry when he stepped on ants by accident. He'd apologize to his stuffed animals if he dropped them. And now he lets his wife tell me to vanish, like I'm some burden she never signed up for. I want to believe he's just stuck in the middle, that he's overwhelmed. But I can't unsee his face that night, expressionless. Not angry, not conflicted, just tired. Tired of me. Did I smother him? Did I give too much? Or maybe not enough? I raised him on my own for 5 years before I met his stepfather. We didn't have much, just a 2-bedroom rental and a rusted old Corolla, but we had each other. I worked 2 jobs, missed my own doctor appointments to afford his soccer cleats, gave up dating for a long time because I couldn't risk a bad man hurting my boy. And now that boy is a man who stood silent while his wife told me to disappear. I try to shake it off. I tell myself I'm being dramatic, sensitive. Maybe she didn't mean it that way. Maybe he was just trying to keep the peace. But deep down I know the truth. I'm not wanted here. Not anymore. I walk past the hall and notice something small but sharp. My photo is gone from the wall. The family picture we took at the Botanical Gardens last spring, the one where I stood beside my son with his arm around my shoulder. It's been replaced by a framed quote in cursive. Good vibes only. I blink at it for a moment too long. I don't remember them asking to move it. Maybe they didn't think I'd notice. Or maybe they hoped I would. I go into my room and sit on the edge of the bed, rubbing the ache in my knees. The room still smells like lavender, my lotion, my sheets, the drawer sachet I've used for years. It's the one scent that feels like mine. I pick up a photo from my nightstand. It's me and my son years ago. He must have been 10. He's got one arm around my neck and a missing front tooth. My hair was darker then. My eyes weren't so tired. We look like the beginning of something good. I whisper to the room, I raised you better than this. The silence answers back. Cold, final. I start thinking of what I'll take when I leave. Just enough to fit in one suitcase. Clothes, my toothbrush, the photo, maybe the book I never finished reading. I don't want to take up space anymore. Not even in my absence. Later that evening, I try to make small talk. I mention the weather. I ask about my granddaughter's school play. My daughter-in-law doesn't answer. She scrolls on her phone and pretends not to hear me. My son finally looks up and says, "She's busy, Mom." Just like that. No apology, no explanation. I nod. They eat on the couch now, even though we have a table. I used to set that table every night, placemats, napkins, the works. Old habits from a time when family meant something. Now it's just fast food wrappers and glowing screens. I wash the dishes I didn't use. I dry them. I place them back in the cabinet I once organized. I wonder if they'd even notice if I stopped. My granddaughter comes in from school and gives me a small wave. No hug, no smile. Just a flick of her hand as she walks by. It hurts more than the fight, because children don't hide what they feel, and I've become invisible even to her. That night I sit with a pen and notepad. I list places I could go, cities I once visited, friends I haven't spoken to in years. I Google bus schedules. I check the balance in my savings account. It's not much, but maybe it's enough. Not to start over, just to breathe. To belong somewhere again, even if that place is just a small rented room with quiet mornings and strong coffee. Somewhere I can remember who I was before I was just in the way. I used to tell myself it was temporary, just a rough patch, just until they got back on their feet. That's what my son said on the phone the night he called me, voice heavy with shame. "Mom, we just need a few months." The layoffs hit harder than we thought. I don't know where else to go. And of course, I said yes. Of course I did. They moved in 3 days later, boxes stacked high in the hallway, my granddaughter asleep in the back seat of their car. I made up the guest room as best I could, washed the sheets, left little chocolates on the nightstand like a hotel. I wanted them to feel welcome. I wanted them to feel loved. Back then, my daughter-in-law even hugged me when she arrived, said thank you with tears in her eyes, said I was a godsend. She doesn't hug me anymore. The first few weeks were fine. We watched TV together in the evenings, took turns cooking. I read bedtime stories to my granddaughter while her parents updated resumes and filled out job applications. I told myself this was what family was for, helping each other. But things changed slowly, subtly. The resume talks turned into Netflix binges. The shared meals became takeout containers left on the counter. The bedtime stories stopped when she said I was making her daughter too dependent. I backed off. I gave them space. I thought maybe I was being too involved, too eager. I started staying upstairs, more pretending I was reading or sleeping early. I tried to become a shadow. And still, it wasn't enough. I began to notice how the air shifted when I entered a room. Conversations paused. Phones got tucked away. Smiles stiffened. I told myself I was imagining it. Until one afternoon, I heard my name in a whisper, followed by laughter. I stood outside the laundry room, a basket in my hands, my back aching, and I listened to them talk about me like I was an obstacle. She always means well, my son said, his tone exhausted. But it's like, she doesn't know when to leave things alone. Or leave, period, my daughter-in-law muttered. They didn't know I was listening. Or maybe they did. Maybe they didn't care. That's when it started to sink in. They were no longer my son and his wife living in my home. I was now the inconvenience living in theirs. But the real pain, the one that wraps its fingers around your throat at night, comes not from her words. It comes from his silence. My son used to call me every day, just to check in, just to tell me he got a parking ticket or found a weird coffee shop. He used to send me pictures of my granddaughter drawing at the table. Now, I was in the same house, and I felt 100 miles away. I started to question every word I said, every step I took. I worried I was taking up too much air, that my footsteps were too loud, that my very presence was a burden. When did things shift? Was it something I said, something I forgot to say? Or is this just how time works? You give your life to someone years love sacrifices, and one day they wake up and look at you like an old sofa they're trying to figure out how to get rid of without hurting your feelings. My husband used to joke that our son would always be a mama's boy, that I'd never be alone as long as we had him. I believed that. I built my future on that belief. But now I sit in the same kitchen where I once taught him how to tie his shoes, and he walks past me like I'm a coat rack. The hurt builds in quiet ways. Like when my granddaughter started calling me Evelyn instead of Grandma. No one corrected her. Or the time I bought groceries with my own money and my daughter-in-law rolled her eyes and said, "We don't eat like that anymore." I tried. God, I tried. I asked what I could do better. I offered to move out half-jokingly just to test the waters. And she smiled. She actually smiled. So now I sit at the edge of my bed and look out the window at the maple tree I planted with my husband 30 years ago. Its branches are thinner now, a little tired, like me, but still standing. I think of all the stories etched into these walls, the birthday banners taped over doorways, the nights spent icing cupcakes and helping with science projects, the day I brought my husband home from the hospital to die in his own bed. This house was a sanctuary once. Now it feels like a waiting room. I keep asking myself, how did we get here? Maybe it doesn't matter. What matters now is this: I can't stay. Because love should not make you feel disposable. And silence, especially from the people you raised, is the loudest kind of rejection. The first time I felt like a guest in my own home, it was over something small, almost stupid. My granddaughter asked for a snack, so I sliced up an apple and sprinkled a little cinnamon on top the way she used to love it. She smiled, said thank you, and went to sit at the kitchen island. 5 minutes later, her mother came in and said, "Next time, ask me first." I blinked. Ask you? She's not supposed to have fruit after 5. It's part of her digestion routine. I wanted to say something, to remind her that I raised a child of my own without apps or blogs or curated rules, but I didn't. I just nodded and apologized. The apple slices went in the trash. That was the first time, but it didn't end there. 1 week later, I folded the towels the way I've always folded them, in thirds, neat, efficient, clean. When I opened the linen closet the next day, every towel had been refolded in tight little squares. No one said anything. They didn't have to. My role was never enough, not in the ways that mattered. I used to believe I was the glue holding everything together, the invisible thread between my son's past and his future. But now I realize I was just convenient, a placeholder, a spare key on the ring useful only when the real one doesn't work. I remember one afternoon, maybe 2 months in, I walked in from the garden with fresh basil. I held it up proudly, said, "Wouldn't this be great in the pasta tonight?" My daughter-in-law looked up from her laptop and said, "We don't really need your help with meals." No smile, no thank you, just that. I tried to tell myself it wasn't personal, that she was stressed, that the job hunt was hard, that young people today carry things differently. But the words kept piling up. They didn't always come sharp, but they always cut. She's always hovering. She has opinions on everything. I just want our space back. It wasn't what they said, it was how often they said it when they thought I couldn't hear. And my son, he didn't push back, not once. He'd sit there nodding gently, never looking in my direction. I started timing my movements around the house. If they were in the kitchen, I waited. If they were in the den, I stayed upstairs. I memorized the squeaky stair so I could avoid stepping on it. I learned to cough softly so I wouldn't scare them if they didn't know I was there. I became small, invisible, silent. The worst part, I still loved them. I still woke up early and checked the weather to make sure my granddaughter had her jacket. I still left folded laundry outside their door. I still restocked the toilet paper, cleaned the bathroom, paid for half the groceries, and pretended not to notice when no one said thank you. I did all of this because that's what mothers do, right? We endure. We keep the peace. We accept the scraps of affection we're given because we remember what it used to feel like to be needed. But something inside me shifted when I realized even my memory had become a nuisance. It happened the night I brought out the photo albums. Just 2 books, nothing heavy. I thought it would be sweet, a little trip down memory lane. My granddaughter climbed into my lap, curious. She pointed at a picture of my son as a teenager, dressed as a scarecrow for Halloween. I was mid-story when her mother looked up and said, "Let's not fill her head with outdated ideas." Okay. My son laughed. Not mean, not cruel, just dismissive. I closed the album. I put it back on the shelf. And that night, I cried into my pillow like a child. It wasn't the album. It wasn't the apple slices, or the towels, or the pasta, or the polite corrections. It was the realization that somewhere along the way I had stopped being her mother-in-law or his mother or grandma. I had become background noise, the woman who came with the house. My name hadn't been said in kindness in weeks. My presence had become an inconvenience no one was brave enough to confront until that night in the kitchen when she finally said it aloud. "Why don't you just disappear?" The cruelty wasn't new. It had just finally gotten tired of whispering. So I started planning. Not out of vengeance, not out of drama, but out of self-respect, because I remembered something I'd forgotten somewhere between late-night diaper changes and early morning school drop-offs. I matter. Even if they've forgotten it, even if they never see it again, I am not a ghost, and I am not disposable. The day they moved in, it rained. Not the heavy kind that floods gutters, but the slow soaking kind, the kind that seeps into everything unnoticed at first until you're chilled straight through. I remember standing at the front window watching their car crawl up the drive trunk, bungeed shut with suitcases stacked high in the back seat. My granddaughter's forehead was pressed against the glass, her breath fogging it up as they parked. She gave me a little wave. It melted me. I had their room ready. Fresh sheets, a new comforter, even a scented candle I'd bought on sale, vanilla and amber, something warm. I baked a banana loaf that morning, even though I knew my daughter-in-law didn't eat carbs. I just wanted it to smell like home. Back then, I truly believed I was saving them. And in some way, I was saving myself, too. The house had been too quiet since my husband passed. The silence at dinner, the empty porch swing, the sound of one teacup being placed on a table instead of 2. I told myself that opening my home would bring life back into it. I told myself this was a blessing. The first night we ate together at the dining table. My granddaughter sat between us humming through her mashed potatoes. My son reached for seconds. My daughter-in-law offered to do the dishes. It felt hopeful, but I should have paid attention to the signs. By week 2, her things began taking up space. The kitchen counter was lined with vitamin jars and a blender she insisted be left out for convenience. My spoon rest disappeared. So did my favorite mug. The little things mine were slowly swallowed by theirs. Still, I stayed gracious. I told myself to be adaptable. This was their home too now. That's what I told myself. By month 1, the routines shifted. My granddaughter's bedtime moved later. The TV was on constantly. They started sleeping and not looking for work as often. When I asked gently if they had any leads, my daughter-in-law laughed. It's just not a good time in the market. I didn't push. That was my mistake. I kept telling myself it was just a phase. That once things got better, they'd move out and we'd laugh about the time we all lived under one roof again. I'd remember it as chaotic but warm, messy but loving. But I couldn't unsee the way they began treating the house. Shoes left all over, doors left open, heat blasting all day while I sat in a cardigan to save money. They stopped asking before inviting guests. They started telling me when things would happen instead. At first I tried to reclaim small bits of space. My reading nook by the window, the garden, the tea kettle that only I used. But even those vanished in time. One afternoon I walked into the kitchen and saw my daughter-in-law rearranging my spice rack. I smiled politely and said, "Oh, I had them grouped by cuisine just so I could find." She interrupted, not unkindly, "This way just makes more sense." I bit my tongue. That night, I cried over cumin and coriander. It sounds silly now, but when the world begins to shrink around you, every inch feels sacred, and every inch taken feels like an amputation. I told myself I was being overly sensitive. I was wrong. The final straw that day wasn't an argument. It wasn't even words. It was a look. We were sitting on the porch swing, just me and my son, a rare moment alone. I asked him gently when they thought they might have a timeline for moving out. Not a demand, just a question, a sense of the future. He didn't get angry. He just looked at me. A look I can't forget. Not annoyed, not offended, just done. Like the conversation was too old, too tired to bother with. He rubbed the back of his neck and said, "We're not really in a rush, Mom." Then he added, "You've got the space right." I stared at him for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or weep. The house I built with my husband, the house we paid off by skipping vacations, by working overtime, the house where every baseboard and cupboard was scrubbed by my own hands, and now I was being asked to justify using it. You got the space right. Like I was some boarding house hostess, they were slowly forgetting to pay. After that, I stopped asking. I stopped hoping. I stopped imagining the laughter at a future goodbye party with balloons and a thanks for everything card. Because I understood they weren't planning on going anywhere. Not until I did. And so began the slow unbuilding of myself, one lost coffee mug at a time, until the day she finally said the words out loud. "Why don't you just disappear?" But now I wonder, had they already decided that long before? Had I simply taken too long to get the message, the doorknobs are colder now? Not just because winter has started to settle in, but because I no longer touch them like they belong to me. I hesitate before opening cabinets. I knock before entering my own bathroom. I walk softer like an intruder, hoping not to get caught. This house, my house, doesn't smell like lavender anymore. It smells like their shampoo, like their takeout boxes and their air diffusers, with names like Moonstone and Balance Mist. My hand soap was replaced last week without a word. I found the old bottle in the trash, barely half used. It's not the things that change you, it's what they signal. They stopped asking before doing, started treating everything here like it was theirs to upgrade, rearrange, or erase. The photos on the staircase wall rearranged to make space for theirs. My wedding portrait now hangs crooked at the very bottom, half blocked by a coat rack. No one said anything. No one asked if it was okay. My recliner, the one I used to fall asleep in during Sunday evening TV, was moved to the garage to make more space. I found it wedged between a lawnmower and a box of holiday decor, dust already gathering on the armrests. When I brought it up, my son shrugged. "We figured you don't use it much anymore." That's what I am now. Unused, unnecessary, unseen. I tried cooking dinner last Friday. The kitchen was empty and I thought, maybe if I make something they love, we'll share a meal again. I roasted chicken, made green beans with lemon zest. My daughter-in-law used to love those. I even made a peach cobbler from scratch. They came home late, brought food with them, didn't even look at the table. Just walked past it like it wasn't there, like I wasn't there. I waited until they were upstairs before packing it all away in Tupperware. Then I stood over the sink, spooning the cobbler into my mouth, trying not to cry. The sweetness turned bitter fast. I've stopped turning on the lights in the hallway. I use a flashlight at night. I don't want to wake anyone. I don't want to be one more thing they whisper about. She's so loud. She's always up. I used to walk barefoot around this house. Now I wear slippers so my steps are softer, so I leave less of a trace. It's like they're waiting for me to fade out completely. And in some ways, I think I already have. My granddaughter used to climb into bed with me during thunderstorms. She used to call me Grandma Evelyn, tug on my sleeve when she wanted more juice. Now she mostly stays in her room, eyes glued to a tablet. I tried asking her about school the other day. She nodded. That was it. The silence stings more than words ever could. I think of the woman I used to be, hostess, mother, provider. I threw bridal showers and Thanksgiving dinners. I crocheted blankets and mended pants and made chicken soup for every sick neighbor on the block. I was needed. Now I'm tolerated. At best. I sometimes catch them whispering when they think I'm upstairs. The walls are thin. I know when the whispering is about me. I hear the sighs, the half-sentences. She just lingers. She's always there. Maybe we should start looking for somewhere else. But they never do. Why should they? This house is rent-free. The fridge is full. There's always toilet paper. The laundry's always done. I keep giving, and it's never enough. I started sleeping with the door locked 2 weeks ago, not out of fear, but out of necessity. I needed one piece of space I could still claim, one doorknob I could touch without flinching. I even moved a small table into the room, started keeping snacks and tea bags in a drawer like a college student in a dorm. Imagine that, a 72-year-old woman living like a guest in her own house, sneaking biscuits and hiding her favorite mug so it won't go missing. But the worst part, I still get up every morning and refill the sugar jar. I still fold the blankets left on the couch. I still leave little notes when I refill their shampoo bottles because I can't stop being who I am, no matter how invisible they make me. Some days I stare out the front window and think about the day my husband carried me over the threshold. He wore a tan suit. I wore a blue dress with a broken zipper we fixed with safety pins and laughter. We were poor, but we were in love. We turned the shell of a house into a home, and now it's not a home anymore. It's just a place where I sleep behind a locked door and tiptoe through mornings like I'm afraid to wake someone. I used to belong here. Now I count down the hours in a day like I'm waiting for permission to exist. Something has to change. Not for them, for me. It happened so subtly I almost missed it. One evening, I stood at the bottom of the stairs like I always do, waiting for my granddaughter to come say goodnight. She'd done it every night since they moved in, sometimes with a sleepy hug, sometimes just a whispered love. Her arms wrapped around her favorite stuffed fox. It became our small ritual. But that night she didn't come. I waited, listening to the quiet shuffle of bedtime upstairs, her little feet moving across the floor, the thump of drawers closing. Then silence. No footsteps coming down, no voice calling night grandma. I stared at the stairs for a long time. The light at the top clicked off. I was still standing there when the fridge kicked on, humming like a reminder. Maybe she was tired, I told myself. Maybe she forgot. But it kept happening. One night turned into 3, then 5. Then 2 weeks passed and it was clear something had shifted. I started saying goodnight first. I'd peek into her room and wave. Sleep tight, sweetheart. She'd mumble something without looking up from her tablet. Sometimes she wouldn't answer at all. And every time her mother would glance over, lips pressed tight. No nod, no warmth. I had become a background prop in their bedtime routine. And my son watched it all, said nothing. That silence kept multiplying. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen when my granddaughter came home from school. I turned and smiled. "Hey, Pumpkin, how was your day?" She didn't even pause, walked right past me, headphones in backpack swinging, like I wasn't even there. I waited for my son to say something, to tell her to greet me, show some respect, but he just poured himself a glass of water and stared into the sink. They were raising her to see me as nothing, and it was working. I can't tell you the exact moment my heart broke, but I think it was the morning she asked if I was just someone who lives here. We were alone in the living room. She was coloring and I was knitting. "Grandma," she asked without looking up, "do you live here or are you just visiting?" The air left my lungs. I opened my mouth to respond, but I couldn't lie. Not really. "I live here," I said slowly, "but I think I might be leaving soon." She nodded like it didn't matter. Like I'd said, I was going to the store. I excused myself and went upstairs, my legs trembling, my chest tight with something I didn't want to name. That's when it hit me. Children only echo what they hear. And she had learned somehow, somewhere, that I didn't count. I spent that whole day sitting by the window pretending to read. The same paragraph over and over. The words blurred until I couldn't tell one line from another. By evening, I was staring at the hallway mirror again. The same mirror I used to check my hair before church. The same one where I held my granddaughter when she was 4, letting her smear lip gloss across my face while we both laughed so hard we cried. Now I barely recognized the woman in the reflection. Tired eyes, lips pressed too tightly, skin sagging around a jaw that used to lift in laughter. A ghost of the woman I used to be. Later that night, I overheard my daughter-in-law on the phone. Her voice was too loud. She was pacing. I just wish she'd go already. Like, how long does it take someone to get the hint? Silence. Then laughter. Then no, she's not a bad person. She's just, always here. Always doing things. It's exhausting. My heart stopped. I crept back into my room like a thief and shut the door behind me. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid in bed clutching my old nightgown, the one my husband always said made me look like a dandelion puff. I whispered into the dark. I don't know how I became this. I had given everything, raised a child by myself for years, supported him through heartbreak, jobs, school, nursed him through mono, drove cross-country for his wedding, paid half the down payment for their first car. And still I was the one being whispered about behind closed doors. Still I was the burden. Not even my granddaughter's memory would carry me forward. That was the night I opened my old suitcase, the one I hadn't used since our last trip to Asheville years ago. I dusted it off, unzipped it. The inside still smelled like lavender. I began folding things quietly, cardigans, socks, 2 nightgowns, my good shoes. I didn't know where I was going yet. I just knew I couldn't stay. Not where a child no longer saw me as someone to say goodnight to. Not in a house where I had to earn every breath. Not here. It started like snowflakes, small, seemingly harmless, soft when they land. But you look up one day and there's a drift tall enough to bury you. That's how it was with the complaints. At first, they were rare and cloaked in politeness. "Mom, maybe don't use so much garlic in the pasta. Emma's stomach's a little sensitive." "Oh, could you maybe not fold the laundry yet? I have a system." Then came the more direct ones. "Please don't rearrange the fridge. We have a flow. She really shouldn't be having juice before bed. It's too much sugar. Can you keep your phone on silent?" The ringer startles the dog. Every day a new rule, a new unwritten law I was expected to obey without question. I began keeping track of them not on paper, but in my mind. Don't use the living room before 10 a.m. Don't talk during her yoga videos. Don't open the windows, she prefers airflow control. Don't leave notes on the counter, it adds to the visual clutter. It wasn't just that I couldn't live how I used to. It was that I was expected to shrink myself into some neat, silent version of a mother who didn't take up too much space or memory. And the hardest part, I kept trying. I tried to anticipate what would offend. I washed only my own dishes, even when their plates piled up. I avoided commenting on their schedules, even when I heard them fighting at 2 a.m. I tiptoed in my own hallway, kept my TV low, turned down my heating blanket so the light wouldn't show under the door. But no matter what I did, it was never quite right. One morning, I left a scarf on the back of a chair. My scarf. My chair, my house. She picked it up and set it on the floor by the stairs. "Let's try to keep things tidy," she said in the same voice she uses with the dog. That's when I started writing it all down. In a small notebook I kept tucked between the pages of a cookbook in my bedroom, not because I needed to remember, but because I needed to prove to myself I wasn't imagining it. There was a difference between being helpful and being erased, and they had crossed it long ago. My son was quieter during these moments. He never spoke up. never defended me. Sometimes he looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot, rubbing the bridge of his nose. But silence, especially from someone you raised, isn't neutral. It's complicity. The day the towels became an issue, something inside me splintered. I had washed and dried a load. I folded them carefully, 3 folds, then in half, the way I've done since before my son was born. I left them stacked neatly in the laundry basket. When I passed the bathroom later that night, I found the pile dumped on the floor. "You folded them wrong," she said flatly when I asked. Wrong. Not differently. Not in a way she preferred. Wrong. As if my decades of housekeeping were obsolete, outdated, pointless. I didn't argue. I just bent and picked them up in silence. But inside, I burned. Because you can only watch yourself be edited out of your own story for so long before you stop recognizing the woman in the mirror. That evening, I walked into the kitchen and reached for a mug. My favorite one, the blue ceramic with the chip on the rim, the one my son made in 4th grade art class. It was gone. I checked every cabinet, every shelf. Gone. I asked gently, "Has anyone seen my blue mug?" She glanced over her shoulder. Oh yeah, it was cracked. I tossed it. No apology, no hesitation. I stood there for a full minute. She threw it away like it was nothing. But it wasn't just a mug. It was a memory. A piece of love hardened into clay. A keepsake from a time before he learned to turn his face away from mine. That night, I sat on the porch alone, wrapped in a blanket, tea cooling in a paper cup from the back of the cabinet. The stars overhead were sharp and cold. And I thought, this will never get better. Not if I stay. Because every day I remain here, I lose another thread of myself. A scarf on a chair. A mug on a shelf. My place at the table. My name on their tongues. I could have screamed. I could have slammed cabinets and shattered dishes. But I knew it wouldn't change a thing. They didn't want me to react. They wanted me to go. And soon, I would. But not in the way they expected. Not with shame. Not with my head bowed. With quiet resolve. With my dignity intact. With a final breath inside these walls, and then freedom. Because if you don't defend yourself, no one else will. And if you don't walk away when the door closes behind your back, you'll never know what sunlight tastes like again. It happened on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic day, not a stormy one. Just an ordinary overcast Tuesday where the air smelled like wet leaves and the house felt colder than usual, even with the heat on. I was in the kitchen slicing vegetables, not for anyone else, just for myself. I had given up trying to cook for them weeks ago. I made a small pot of soup, carrot and ginger, something to warm the bones. I heard them talking in the next room, not whispering this time, just talking, careless, like I wasn't there. Or maybe like I was and didn't matter. She just hovers. It's like living with a ghost. My daughter-in-law said, her voice light like a joke. My son gave a small laugh. I know, I keep telling her to relax, but she's always doing something. She treats this place like it's hers. The knife in my hand stopped moving. Something broke in me then, not with fire, not with fury, but with a cold, still clarity. I wiped my hands on a towel, walked around the corner into the living room. They both froze when they saw me. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just stood there, holding the dish towel in my hands like a white flag I'd never intended to wave. You know, I said, my voice level, this house is mine. It was mine long before either of you walked through the door. Every board, every tile, every crack in the ceiling mine. My son blinked, caught off guard. Mom, we didn't mean. I raised a hand. No, I'm speaking now. And I did. Not loud, not angry, but firm, clear. I spoke of every quiet slight, every rolled eye, every time they'd moved something without asking, every photo replaced, every memory erased. I told them how it felt to be tolerated in the home I had built, how it felt to be talked about like a piece of rotting furniture they didn't know how to get rid of. I didn't list everything I didn't need to. The weight of it was already thick in the room. My voice didn't shake, not once. I opened this house to you out of love, I said, not because I was lonely, not because I was desperate, but because I wanted to help. I turned to my son, and you of all people should have known better. His eyes dropped, just for a second, just enough. My daughter-in-law didn't speak. She folded her arms and leaned back into the couch, defensive already. but I wasn't speaking for her anymore. "I don't need your permission to belong in my own home," I said, "but I no longer want to live somewhere I am resented for breathing." I let the silence hang. "You wanted me to disappear," I asked, looking between them. "Fine, I will, but not in shame. Not because I'm a burden. I'll go because I deserve peace." It was the first time in months I had seen them truly speechless. I walked back into the kitchen, turned off the stove, and poured the soup into containers. Not for them. For me, for the road. They didn't follow, they didn't apologize, they didn't say stay. And somehow that made it easier. That night I made a list. Things I would pack. Things I would leave behind. I stood in the hallway and looked at the staircase one last time. The photos half removed, the paint chipped along the banister, the rug that still had the wine stain from my husband's retirement party, and I whispered a quiet goodbye. Not to them, to the life I thought I still had. I slept with the window cracked even though it was cold. I needed to feel the night air again. I needed to remember what it felt like to breathe without holding something back. I didn't cry. I didn't regret it. Because when you've been quiet for too long, finally speaking feels like remembering your own name after years of being called something else. There are words that echo long after they're spoken. You hear them at odd hours in the stillness before sleep, in the hum of the refrigerator, in the hush between footsteps. "Why don't you just disappear?" She said it like a slap, a casual cruelty, tossed like dirty laundry onto the floor of a tired marriage. And maybe that's all it was to her, a moment of exasperation, one bitter spark in a long string of quiet tensions. But to me, it was a knife, not because it hurt, but because it clarified. That was the moment I finally understood I wasn't wanted. Not here, not by her, and worst of all, not by him, because he didn't defend me. He didn't blink. He just stood there, arms crossed, leaning against the counter like he'd already made his decision weeks ago and was just waiting for me to catch up. I don't know what I expected. For him to raise his voice to tell her she'd gone too far, to say, "Mom, don't listen to that. Of course we want you here." He said none of it. He just let the silence agree with her. And something inside me went quiet too. Not broken, just finished. I stood there holding a sponge water dripping down my wrist. I stared at the chicken I had cooked. No one touched it. Not even a thank you. It sat on the counter like an artifact from a mother who still believed her love could fix things. She walked away first, clicked her heels across the floor, and vanished up the stairs like the moment had bored her. My son lingered. For a second, I thought he might turn to me, might say something, but he didn't. He followed her. That's when I knew. I wasn't going to fight anymore. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to leave. Not with drama, not with slammed doors or weeping letters, but quietly, thoroughly, with the kind of grace you only earn after a lifetime of being the last one standing. The next morning, I began to move. I didn't pack loudly. I didn't draw attention. I folded sweaters while the house slept, rolled my socks like I used to roll my son's when he was in Little League. I placed the photo of my husband face down, then changed my mind and tucked it gently into my suitcase. I left most of my things behind, not out of kindness, out of clarity. Let them fill the space with whatever made them feel superior. Let them redecorate, reclaim, pretend I had never been there at all. Let them tell themselves whatever story they needed to, but I would not be part of it anymore. Around noon, I called a motel in the next town over, clean, quiet, close to a bus route. I booked a room for a week. Then I walked into the kitchen, opened the junk drawer, and found a pad of sticky notes. I wrote 3 words in neat cursive. "Don't worry, goodbye." I didn't sign it. I didn't have to. I left it by the coffee pot, the one I used to brew for them every morning, even after they stopped thanking me. I took one last walk through the house, ran my fingers along the wall where we measured my son's height every year until he was 15, touched the worn banister where my husband used to rest his hand, listened to the soft creak in the floor near the back door. All of it still mine in some invisible way, but I was done trying to prove it. I stepped outside into the weak winter sun. My suitcase wheels caught on the crack in the driveway, the one they never fixed. I didn't look back. I walked toward the bus stop with my cardigan buttoned tight, the morning chill wrapping around my ankles. A man at the corner nodded to me. I nodded back. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to freedom. I thought about my granddaughter then, about her tiny hand in mine, about her quiet question, "Are you just visiting?" And I finally knew the answer. Yes, sweetheart. I was, but not anymore. The zipper gets stuck. Of course it does. It's 2:17 a.m., and I'm crouched on the floor of my bedroom, one knee pressed into the carpet, tugging gently at the rusted teeth of a suitcase that hasn't been used in over a decade. It smells like cedar and dust. The same suitcase I took on our anniversary trip to Charleston. The same one that came back with me alone after the funeral in Atlanta. I pause, breathe, try again. This time it closes. Inside, 2 pairs of slacks, 1 cardigan, my walking shoes, my reading glasses, my old Bible. A framed photo of my husband wrapped in a scarf so the glass won't break, and a worn, handwritten recipe for lemon squares, my son's favorite when he was little. I take it out, stare at the smudged ink, and tuck it back in. The rest I leave behind. I move slowly through the house like a ghost, careful not to bump into walls or creak floorboards. I know this house better than anyone else, where it groans, where it sighs, where it's weakest. I step into the hallway, the same one I painted soft blue after my husband passed something calming. I remember how proud I was of the trim work, even though no one ever mentioned it. I stop at my granddaughter's door, just for a moment. The light from her nightlight spills into the hallway, a soft pink glow. The kind little girls love before the world teaches them to love colder things. I almost knock, almost step in, almost whisper one last goodnight. But I don't. What would I say? What version of me has she learned to see? The woman who says too much, who hovers, who lingers too long in rooms she's no longer invited into. She'll wake tomorrow and I'll be gone. Maybe she'll notice. Maybe she won't. I walk downstairs, passing the gallery wall, once filled with our memories, now redecorated with faux farmhouse signs and magazine clippings in whitewashed frames. Bless this mess. Live, laugh, love. Family is everything. The irony scrapes something deep inside me. I reach the kitchen. The counters are still littered with takeout bags from last night. Someone's forgotten their phone charger looped lazily around a coffee mug. My mug? No, this one's too sleek, too modern. Mine was tossed. I reach for the counter and leave my keys behind, lay them down gently beside a single sheet of paper. I hadn't planned to write anything, but I did. Just a few lines folded in half. You asked me to disappear, so I did. I hope you find peace in the space where I used to be. I don't cry. Not because I'm not sad, but because the sadness has already passed through me. What's left is stillness, resolve. I glance at the fridge where a drawing from my granddaughter hangs by a single magnet. A house, 2 stick figures, one tall with silver hair, one small with a yellow bow. The son in the corner is smiling. I take a photo of it with my phone. Then I leave it there. Out on the porch, the night is thick and quiet. The streetlight casts a soft glow on the damp steps. My breath clouds the air in short, visible bursts. The cab pulls up, right on time. The driver helps me load my suitcase into the trunk without asking questions. I slide into the back seat. The upholstery is cracked. There's a pine tree air freshener swinging from the rearview mirror. As we pull away, I glance one last time at the house. No lights on upstairs. No silhouettes in the window. Just darkness. Just distance. Just the soft hum of tires against the pavement as I disappear into the night, not as a woman discarded, but as a woman reclaimed. They may tell themselves whatever story helps them sleep, that I overreacted, that I was dramatic, that I left because I couldn't adjust. Let them, because I know the truth. I didn't leave because I was weak. I left because I was tired of begging to matter. And I don't have to live like that anymore. The room smells like bleach and cigarette smoke. Not the comforting scent of lavender detergent or fresh cookies from my old kitchen, but clean enough, blank enough. Like a chalkboard wiped down, waiting for a new story. It's a modest motel on the edge of town, brown carpeting, floral curtains that don't quite close, a rattling heater that clicks 3 times before it hums. But the sheets are fresh, the faucet runs warm, and the night clerk called me ma'am with tired respect. I like it here. For now, I unpack slowly. 1 drawer for clothes, 1 for little things, my notepad reading glasses, a tiny bag of peppermints I'd stashed in my coat pocket. I set the photo of my husband on the nightstand. He smiles at me through the glass, like he knows I did the right thing. The tea bags I packed chamomile not fancy go into a foam cup. I rinse out twice before using. I pour the hot water from the motel's lobby thermos. No kettle, no porcelain cup. But as I sit in the stiff chair beside the window, legs tucked beneath me, it tastes like peace. A strange foreign kind of peace. No footsteps overhead, no whispers, no forced smiles or eggshell silences. Just me, the low hum of the heater, and a quiet that doesn't sting. I take my time. I let the quiet fill in the bruised places. By morning, I rise with no alarms, no slamming doors, no urgent chores, just the light slowly stretching across the carpet and a robin tapping at the window. I make myself a plan. Not a grand one, not a dramatic reinvention, just simple steps. A phone call to a former neighbor I haven't spoken to in years. A peek at the community bulletin board in the lobby, a small corner of the world mind to explore again. I take a walk that afternoon, just around the block. No one knows me here. No one expects anything from me. No one sees me as a problem to solve or a habit to break. I breathe. I buy a scone from a cafe and eat it on a bench. I laugh out loud when powdered sugar lands on my coat. And in that moment, I realize I don't miss the house. Not the kitchen, not the hallway, not the rooms where I had to apologize just for existing. I miss my son, the version of him that used to run into my arms when he was 5. The boy who once called me his favorite person in the whole world. But the man, the one who stood silent while his wife told me to vanish. I don't miss him. And that grief is a freedom of its own. I sit on the motel bed that evening, the television low, the curtains fluttering, and I whisper to myself, not for anyone else to hear, I deserve better than that. Not better furniture, not better walls, better treatment, better love. The kind that doesn't resent me for breathing, the kind that doesn't weaponize silence. I jot a few notes in my notebook, things to look into. Room rentals near the park, local book clubs, volunteer at the church thrift shop. The list is short, but it's mine. I wrap myself in the scratchy motel blanket. The heater hums. The tea cools beside me. I close my eyes, and for the first time in what feels like years, I rest. Not out of exhaustion, but because I've finally stopped fighting to be seen in a house that chose not to see me. The pen shakes slightly in my hand. It's not the cold. The heater in this little room has finally warmed the corners. It's not fear either, not anymore. It's the weight of everything I've held inside now, pressing against the page in ink. I didn't plan to write them. But something about this place, the stillness, the distance, the complete absence of expectation has made room in me. Room to speak without interruption, without eye rolls, without sighs. So I write. No dear, no toe. Just the words that have been building inside me for months, maybe years. I didn't leave out of spite. I left because I realized I had already been erased. I take a sip of tea. My second cup. The taste is metallic from the motel kettle, but warm, steady. You treated my presence like an inconvenience, like something to be managed, muted, forgotten. I scratch that last word out and write discarded. I gave you everything I had, time, love, home, and still I was too much. Too loud, too quiet, too helpful, too opinionated, too present. I write about the dinner I made that sat untouched, the towels I folded that were thrown on the floor, the photo of your childhood I found missing, the mug you threw away. You didn't just remove a coffee cup, you removed a memory, a piece of me. I pause. The motel television hums in the background, a commercial for a local car lot, no one talking to me, no one correcting me, just me, and my voice. Unfiltered. I spoke gently. You mocked my softness. I gave quietly. You exploited my silence. I stayed. You waited for me to leave. I write about my granddaughter, about the first night she stopped saying goodnight, about the look in her eyes that told me she had already learned I was someone not worth noticing. That part hurts more than you'll ever understand. I sign it simply, Mom, and after a moment I add, Grandma. Then I fold the letter, seal it, and place it in an envelope. I don't know if I'll mail it. Maybe I'll leave it tucked in the photo album they never opened. Maybe I'll burn it. But writing it was enough. It was never about changing them. It was about no longer silencing myself. Later, I take a walk to the mailbox by the gas station. I bring the letter with me. I hold it in my hand for a long time. The metal flap feels cold, indifferent. I drop it in. Not because I want them to hurt, but because I want them to know I saw it all. And because deep down, a small part of me still hopes, just hopes they might read my words and feel something. Regret, grief, shame, something. I walk back with my collar turned up, the wind tugging gently at my coat. I stop at a small thrift shop near the edge of town. A hand-painted sign in the window says, "We're glad you're here." I step inside. A woman behind the counter smiles. "Let me know if you need anything, sweetheart." No one has called me sweetheart in a long time. I nod, my throat tightens. I browse a little, touch a soft scarf, run my fingers over a stack of used books. I buy a single paperback, 99 cents. It's not much, but it's a beginning. That night, I sit in bed and open it. The pages smell like someone else's home, and for once that doesn't ache. I am not what they said I was. I am not too much, not invisible, not disposable. I am a woman rebuilding herself one quiet breath at a time. And they'll read my letters someday. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but one day. And when they do, they'll know what they lost. It's a small town, not the kind you see on postcards or in movies, no cute bakeries with French names, no farmers markets with gourmet honey, just an honest place where people wave when you walk by and the sidewalks are cracked from time and use. I like it here. There's a bench near the post office where I sit most mornings, a cup of coffee in one hand, a book in the other. I've started keeping a journal again. Nothing poetic, just small notes. The lady at the laundromat helped me fold my sheets. The man with the blue truck always parks crooked. The coffee shop owner called me friend today. It's not much, but it's mine. I found a room for rent in a widow's bungalow 2 blocks from the bus stop. Her name is Lillian, 79. A sharp mind and a sharp tongue. She plays jazz in the evenings and insists we eat dinner together at least once a week. I don't like silence, she told me flatly the day I moved in. It gets too loud. I laughed harder than I had in months. My room is small, a single window that looks out over her hydrangea bushes, a dresser with squeaky drawers, a twin bed with a quilt that smells like lemon soap and something older history maybe. It's perfect. No one knocks without asking. No one critiques how I fold towels. No one tells me I'm too much. I joined the local library's afternoon club. On Wednesdays, we read paperbacks and drink lukewarm tea in a back room that smells like pencil shavings and cinnamon. I walk everywhere now. To the grocery store, to the bank, to the post office where I mail cards to no one in particular, just little messages to myself sent under fake names. You are doing just fine. Don't forget how strong you are. You made it out. I found a consignment shop that accepted the coat I no longer wanted, the one I wore in their house, the one that always carried the scent of someone else's food. I traded it for a secondhand cardigan with a missing button. I sewed on a new one myself. Small victories. Lillian and I sit on the porch most evenings. She tells stories about her late husband's obsession with garden gnomes. I tell her about the night I left. She doesn't say much, just listens. But the first time I finished the story, every word of it, including the letter, the soup, the silence she reached over, squeezed my hand and said, "Took guts." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "It took too long," I whispered. She looked me straight in the eye. Better too long than never. I think about that a lot. Because healing isn't fast. It's slow, uneven. Like knitting a blanket with trembling hands, you drop stitches. You lose your place. But if you keep going, eventually the shape returns. And every day I'm here, I feel a little more like myself. I hung up the drawing my granddaughter made, the one with the house and the smiling sun. I printed out the photo I took of it, framed it, and placed it by my bed. Not as a wound, as a reminder. There was love once, And love, even when it breaks, doesn't mean you failed. It just means you tried. Maybe one day she'll look for me. Maybe one day he'll call. Maybe not, but I won't wait because I'm not disappearing anymore. I'm not shrinking to fit into places I've outgrown. I'm not begging to be seen. I'm building something new, quiet, gentle, and wholly mine. And this town, with its crooked parking and uneven sidewalks, feels like the kind of place where a woman like me can start over. No permission needed. The phone rings on a Thursday. I'm in the garden behind Lillian's house, kneeling in the dirt, coaxing a stubborn root out of the earth. The sun is soft on my shoulders, and I smell like rosemary and soil. When I wipe my hands on my jeans and check the screen, I see his name. My son. It's the first time in weeks. Maybe months. Long enough that I no longer count the days. Long enough that the ache has dulled into something quiet. I don't answer, not out of anger, but because I know what he'll say. He'll start soft. Maybe with an apology. Maybe with a "Hey Mom, how are you?" that pretends nothing happened. He'll ask where I am, say they were worried, say the house feels weird without me. He'll speak in fragments, but he won't say the words I waited years to hear when it mattered most. So I let it ring. I pressed the phone against my chest for a moment just to feel the vibration of something that once meant everything. Then I set it down and returned to the rosemary. That night, I light a candle in my room. Just one. The scent is vanilla and old paper. I read a few pages from a used book, then slip into bed. Peace isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet breath under a quilt that doesn't smell like anyone else's expectations. They've called twice since. Left voicemails. The first tentative, the second heavier. We're just trying to figure out what's next. I imagine them walking through the house, my house, realizing that the silence feels different now, not peaceful but hollow. No folded towels, no fresh banana bread, no light in the kitchen at dawn. Now maybe they thought I'd leave in a storm, with slammed doors and shattered dishes. But I didn't. I left in silence. I left in grace. And they won't forget that. Because some absences echo louder than words ever could. Lillian bought a small cake last week. No occasion. She just looked at me and said, "You seem lighter." I smiled. I am. I've stopped rehearsing what I wish I'd said. Stopped writing unsent letters in my mind. Stopped carrying guilt that doesn't belong to me. I've learned to love this quiet, this slowness, this life without walking on eggshells. I volunteer now. Twice a week at the church pantry. The pastor calls me the steady one. I haven't told him how deeply I needed those words. There's a man who comes in on Fridays. Gray beard, crooked smile, always asks if I've read the latest local paper. He's kind, gentle, calls me Miss Evelyn like it's a title of honor. We laugh. I don't know what it will become, but I'm not rushing toward anything anymore. I'm simply being, the way I was never allowed to be under that roof. I think of my granddaughter sometimes. I wonder what she remembers, what she's been told. I wonder if one day she'll find that letter in a box, or see my handwriting in a cookbook, or catch a scent lemon and lavender and think of me. And if she does, I hope she feels love, not shame, not anger, just the quiet, aching truth that sometimes people leave, not because they stopped loving you, but because they finally started loving themselves. And what I gained, a life, not flashy, not big, but one where I no longer ask for room, one where I wake up and don't flinch at footsteps in the hall, one where I am not erased. I will never again explain my worth to anyone who questions it. That was the cost of staying, and I've paid it long enough. Sometimes the hardest thing a person can do is walk away without slamming the door. I didn't leave because I hated them. I left because I couldn't keep living in a house that asked me to disappear piece by piece. Maybe they'll never understand that, but I do. I understand that quiet sacrifice is still sacrifice, that love does not mean invisibility, that being the peacekeeper is not the same as being at peace. And in this little room with its soft sheets and creaking floors, I found something I didn't know I was missing. Stillness, space, a life I don't have to fight for. I smile more now. I sleep deeper. I take my time walking to the store. I hum to myself in the morning. I remember things I had forgotten, the way I used to dance while doing dishes, the way my husband held my hand on cold nights, the way laughter used to bubble out of me without permission. I don't know what's coming next. But I know this. I will never again shrink to fit into a life that can't hold all of me. And if they think of me, and I believe someday they will, I hope it isn't with guilt or shame. I hope it's with awe. Because I didn't vanish. I chose to rise.